All right. So for now, I think let me hand over to Robert so that he can take us through the presentation. But before he does that, let us close our eyes for a word of prayer. Beloved Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for yet another opportunity that you would have us to learn how best and how wisely, Heavenly Father, we can do homeschooling. Gracious Heavenly Father, I pray that you be with Robert as he stands. I pray that you be with each and every one of us as we listen. May your glory, Heavenly Father, be seen in this place this afternoon. Be with us with the rest of all the programs lined up for this day and this whole conference. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, so as already said, I'm Robert Nthewa. In terms of church gathering, I go to Central Church. I'm married with 3 children. I'll try to just give this gathering what we have researched on in terms of the legality of homeschooling in Malawi. I should recognize the research by Justice Tom Ligowe. Our research was matching, and I just in terms of taking what he researched on and what I've researched on, adding some few things and come up with this presentation. So if I say it's sorry, my presentation I'll be lying. So mostly I acknowledge what Justice Ligowe has done into this presentation. As a way of introduction, we are going to, as a way of outline rather, we are going to have an introduction, then we'll discuss the right to education at international level, then the right to education in Malawi, where I will be looking at the Constitution, the Education Act, some of the things, they are not here, but I'll also talk a bit of education policy in Malawi. Then we'll conclude. When we are concluding, we'll go back to the questions that we were given to guide us in this research. So these are the questions that we used as our guide, as provided by... Okay, thank you. Sorry, I thought this is working, so I'll try to raise my voice. So these are the questions that we are asked to research on. First question was, how does the law in general view the right to education in the world and in Malawi in particular? Secondly, we were asked to research on whether it is legal to homeschool in Malawi. Thirdly, what general pitfalls are there in general and in Malawi to be avoided? Number 4, as the world moves closer to the end, certain liberties will be restricted. So the question is, do homeschooling parents have any legal recourse before they just give in to the fight? Fifth, is it necessary to have the homeschooling children registered? So, we are going to answer the questions together at the end, but what we are trying to do is to just give the picture as to what the law is as it stands. So, in our research, we had some difficulties to find anything about homeschooling in Malawi. So, what is clear is that homeschooling is a new concept and is not known to the education system in Malawi. Commonly in Malawi, what we have is remedial studies where learners, they take extra lesson after school. And with the COVID-19, most parents were teaching their children at home, and even worldwide during COVID and after COVID. That's when the concept of homeschooling became a popular thing. except the two countries that we have cited, UK and USA, they have advanced in homeschooling children. So it remains to be clear whether our understanding of homeschooling is the same with the way UK and USA understand the concept of homeschooling. So this paper will just give an overview of the law and highlights area of interest for discussion in view of the kind of homeschooling that we wish for our children. So at the end, we'll discuss the question in view of the current legal landscape that I'm going to do just right now. So the concept of education at international level, it comes as part of human rights. When we are discussing human rights, that's when we come up with the right to education. That's where the concept of education comes in the education system. So it is provided under Universal Declaration on Human Rights, that is 1948, and this was followed by the Convention, International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. So, as to the Universal Declaration, what it's saying is that everyone has the right to education, and education shall be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. So, elementary education shall be compulsory. Again, technical and professional education shall be made generally available, and higher education shall be equally accessible to all on the basis of merit. Of interest is sub-article 3, where it says parents have a prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. And this has run throughout all the legislation that provide for a right of education. As we will see soon, when we came up with International Covenant on Education, Social and Cultural Rights under Article 13, it also provides recognized parents to choose what is the best education for their children, among others. So, of importance, we should take note the freedom parents have in the choice of education for their children. But this choice, again, is subject to minimum education standards as may be laid down or approved by the state or the government. And the Committee for Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights explained that with regard to Article 13, sub-Article 2, education at all levels and in all forms ought to be available, accessible, adaptable, and acceptable. And when we are talking of availability, all what they are focusing on is having a functioning education institution and programs which are in sufficient quality within the jurisdiction of the state. And to make education available, states have the duty to provide compulsory and free education. Again, under the general comment by the committee, they consider that the states parties have a clear and unequivocal obligation to draw up a plan of action for ensuring compulsory and free primary education. And the main focus, the basic education should be free and compulsory. So the committee points out that lack of educational opportunity often reinforces the subjection of people to various other human rights violations. So if there is no education, it means, in their view, it means you are violating other rights on the children. On accessibility, it emphasizes on making education accessible to everyone without discrimination on the basis of prohibited grounds. and religion is one of them. So if we are doing homeschooling in terms of our basis being religion, then we can argue to say that we are covered under this accessibility in terms of it may amount to discrimination if people on religious beliefs, they have chosen to do homeschooling than sending children to mainstream schools. So governments are obligated to take all appropriate steps towards the elimination of any stereotypes concept of the laws of men, though it's focusing on gender or women, discrimination on the basis of gender, but we still include religion as part of the grounds, prohibited grounds on discrimination. Acceptability, when we are talking of acceptable or acceptability, its central focus is on the curriculum. As you see, the state, they are supposed to come up with a curriculum at all levels. That's what is there on the ground, and generally it is provided through the Minister of Education. So the curriculum, it has to be relevant, culturally appropriate, and good quality to students, and in appropriate cases, it should also be of good quality to parents. So states are obliged to ensure that all schools conform to minimum criteria which it has developed, as well as ascertaining that education is acceptable both to parents and the children. So the feature of acceptability, therefore, belongs in the freedom and choice to establish private institutions for the benefit of their cultural, racial, linguistic, and religious minorities. So, with the concept of accessibility, where we are doing homeschooling, basically what we are saying is accessibility also ensures that we can choose to homeschool our children. So and again under Article 13, as per the general comment, they are saying that persons belonging to national minority have the right to set up and manage their own private education and training establishment, including the language and the like. So acceptability as well focuses on the child-friendly nature of schools. So the Convention on the Rights of a Child makes provision for education to respect the right of a child to be curious and to ask any question and receive answers, to argue and disagree, to test and make mistakes, to know and not to know, to create and be spontaneous. We also talk about adaptability. So basically it entails education has to be adaptable. So here we are talking of education being flexible, so it can adapt to the needs of changing societies and communities and respond to the needs of students within their diverse social and cultural settings. And I also argue to say that religious can be catch under the cultural settings, social and cultural setting. It can encompass also religion. Adaptability further entails that education and its mode of delivery is tailored for students such as migrants, refugees, working students, students with children, students in detention, and homeless students, and students with disabilities. Again, in all this, the convention also requires that whatever education that we are giving to children, we should consider the best interest of the child. That's the paramount consideration when we talk of children's rights. So failure to implement the above features of right to education may be actionable or rather enforceable. So I've given the case of Jehovah Witnesses against Argentina, where the court held that the president's action amounted to a violation of the right to education. The facts of the case are different to homeschooling, but what was happening that the president made a decree banning the Jehovah Witnesses and including that the children should not go to schools, and even other parents chose to homeschool the children just for the purpose that when the ban is uplifted, or even if there is a ban, they should access the examination. But they were even denied the examination. So the court held that it was a violation of human rights. So since there was also an element of homeschooling just for the purpose of examination, we can also put our situation, we can marry our situation to the facts as appearing in Jehovah Witness versus the government of Argentina. Okay, so when we are talking of right to education at international level, basically it creates obligation to the state. It's like we are not focusing much on parents or any other person. We are focusing on the state duty to provide education. Because the system we are in is that when we elect leaders, we are submitting our everything to them so that they can run or govern in our best interest, whether it's in our best interest, but it is assumed that we have entrusted them to conduct the governing business in any way they want, as long as they maintain the trust, what we call sustained trust. So, the obligation, just like any human right, imposes 3 levels of obligation. We are talking of respect for the rights, protection for the rights, and fulfilling state's obligation on the particular right. So when we are talking of respect, it requires the state parties to avoid measures that hinder or prevent the enjoyment of the right to education. Under protection, we are saying that the state should take measures that prevent third parties from interfering with enjoyment of the right to education. Now the tricky part is that parents are included as third parties, which the state should guard on for prevention of interfering with the enjoyment of the right to education. The obligation to fulfill, it requires states to take positive measures that enable and assist individuals and communities to enjoy the right to education. Finally, states parties have obligation to fulfill the right to education. We're going to look at each aspect of the obligation of the state. So, obligation to respect. States are expected not to negatively interfere or violate the exercise or realization of the right to education. So, states are expected to eliminate all the laws that are contrary to the exercise of the right to education. And with regard to Article 13 of the same, we are talking of Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. State parties are not expected to interfere with, but rather expected to respect the liberty of parents and guardians to ensure the religious and moral education of their children is in conformity with their own conviction. So, this is provided as a general comment to that provision, Article 13. So, the background of that right to education, it includes this aspect under the general comment to say that the state should not interfere with, but rather expected to respect the liberty of parents and guardians to ensure the religious and moral expectation of their children is in conformity with their own conviction. which I believe that if we choose to homeschool, we are at the international level, at least under the obligation to respect. The government is supposed to respect our choice. So, and the state should not interfere with that. We can discuss this at the end. So, a number of states have enacted laws impose duties on government to respect the right to education. So this is evident by looking at the provision under our own constitution and also the constitution of the Republic of South Africa. Obligation to protect. So obligation to protect, it's basically the states taking up the responsibility of preventing third parties from interfering with the enjoyment of the right to education. So this is where I was saying that these third parties may include educational institutions. Okay, so if we are doing homeschooling and we have registered a homeschooling institution, we are regarded as the third party, and the state should prevent the institution from interfering. So as long as we are not interfering with the right to education, we are good to go. But just to emphasize that educational institutions are included as the third parties, which the state should guard upon. The state also has a responsibility to ensure that parents are not interfering with their children's right to receiving education, particularly female children. This therefore shows that the state have the responsibility to protect its citizens from acts of discrimination in right to education. I should state that this kind of responsibility to ensure that parents are not interfering with the children's rights to receiving education, it did not capture the homeschooling element, but the aspect that were included here is the way our parents are preventing children to go to school. Not that they are being homeschooled, but they are sent to do other things like bringing some income to the house instead of children receiving education. That I should make it clear. It should be emphasized, however, that the education offered must be adequate in quality, relevant to the child, and must promote the realization of the child's other rights. So whatever education, whether it's provided in a formalized institution or informal institutions, but it should at least offer the set standards. As I have already said that right to education, children's right to education from being infringed by parents who would rather have their children to look after the house or contribute financially by working instead of going to school. That's where this article is capturing, not necessarily the element of homeschooling. The obligation to fulfill. This entails that state must take positive steps to ensure that those lacking access to the enjoyment of rights gain access. So they are expected to take all the necessary measures to ensure education is equally accessible, available, acceptable, and adaptable. So it incorporates both an obligation to facilitate and an obligation to provide. Under facilitation, this is associated with states providing positive action to ensure that persons can exercise and enjoy their right to education by adopting laws and policies that protect the right to education. The committee also urged states to closely monitor education, including all relevant policies, institutions, programs, spending patterns and other practices so as to identify and take measures to redress any de facto discrimination. So what the states are advised is that they should closely monitor whosoever is operating a school for children. The state should closely monitor to make sure, not necessarily to as a way of witch hunting, but to identify gaps so that the state should come with measures to close those gaps. States may as well prevent discrimination with regard to human rights by ensuring that no one is discriminated, including the vulnerable groups like female and person with disabilities. So, in order to fulfill the enjoyment of the right to education, government ought to provide free primary education. Basically, that's the legal framework at international level. Now, we can discuss the right to education in Malawi. From the beginning, before I go into the right to education in Malawi, I should say that the way it operates at international level, you come up with a legal framework. Then, if our state signs that treaty, creating that legal framework, it is regarded as a party to that treaty. So, that treaty, for example, we were talking of covenant on economic, social, and cultural rights. That can only operate in Malawi. Whatever we have just discussed, can only operate in Malawi if Malawi create its own law to enable that treaty to operate in Malawi. Yeah, so if we can only rely on what is provided under international law, if Malawi both signs and went ahead to enact an enabling legislation. So that's why we have right Education Act in Malawi. So it's more like giving effect to what is provided under international law. So coming home, our right is provided under the Constitution of the Malawi, under Section 25. All what it says, all persons are entitled to education. Primary education shall consist of at least 5 years of education, and private schools and other private institutions of higher learning shall be permissible. So people are allowed to come up with private institutions, provided that the only condition they are saying that such school and institution are registered with a state department in accordance with the law. So if we are to run a private institution, that shall be registered. And the standards maintained by such schools or institutions are not inferior to official standards in state schools. You can operate private institution with standards higher than offered by government, but you are not supposed to offer standards that are lower than public institutions. Now, under Education Act, there are some interesting definitions. They are defining primary education to mean that at least first 7 levels of formal education. And primary school is defined, it means a school at which primary education is provided. And the school, it means an institution at which a student receives regular, and there is a qualification, not only regular, but regular secular instruction, whether by person, tuition, or by open and distance learning. And it goes on and on. But the emphasis there is that it seems our Education Act, the emphasis is secular as opposed to religious education. So it's more of secular education than religious education. So it also says any institution, assembly, or place maintained or approved by a ministry or department other than the ministry for the purpose of providing specialized education, or any institution, assembly, or place in which instruction is, in the opinion of the minister, whole or many of a religious character, provide that any class, division, or section of any such last mentioned institution, assembly, or place in which instruction is, the opinion of the minister, whole or many devoted to secular service, shall be deemed to be a school. Okay, let me start it from there. So, what we are saying is, we are saying that the emphasis is regular secular education. So, now they are saying, laboratory staff and ancillary building used in connection with a school, but does not include. So, that part that I read, they are saying these two, A and B, is not included as a school. Okay? According to the Act. So if you are running any institution, assembly, or place maintained or approved by a minister or department other than the Minister of Education for the purpose of providing specialized instruction, that does not fall under the definition of a school. They are continuing to say any institution or assembly or a place in which the instruction is, in the opinion of the minister, wholly or mainly of a religious character, provide that any class, division, or section of any such last mentioned institution, assembly, or place in which instruction is, in the opinion of the minister, wholly or mainly devoted to secular service, shall be deemed to be a school. Is it clear? Okay. Let me interpret. They are saying any institution or assembly or a place in which the instruction is, in the opinion of the minister, wholly or mainly of a religious character, that is not a school. It can only become a school if any class, division, or section of any such last mention, meaning this, what we are saying is not a school if it's wholly about religious character. It can become a school if, in the opinion of the minister, whole or many devoted to secular service shall be deemed. If you have a religious institution and it's only for the religious purpose, that is not a school. The minister can certify it as a school if a minister is satisfied that you are providing some secular subject. Unfortunately, the act has not defined the secular, but secular, it means the normal subject that they are taught in our schools. Those are secular, and even science. Some science concepts may be different in our religious beliefs on the creation of the earth, all those big bang theories. So those are secular subjects. Yes. The minister can certify it can qualify the definition of a school. Yeah, otherwise, in the first place, it's not school. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. School minus secular subject is not a school. Yeah. So the Act also provides the duties of a minister. So there are a lot. I may be focused on some, particularly with the one which we have highlighted. I will read the subsection 2 to say, in the exercise and performance of all the duties and power conferred and imposed upon the minister by this Act, the minister shall have regard, 1, to the general guiding principle of access, quality, relevance, efficiency, equality, equity, liberalization, partnership, decentralization, transparency, and accountability. Those are the main principles that the minister should be guided. And of particular interest is the second one, in particular to the general principle that in so far as is compatible with the provision of efficient instruction and training and the avoidance of excessive public expenditure, students are supposed to be educated in accordance with the wishes of their parents. So it is also the duty of the minister to make sure that students are educated in accordance with the wishes of their parents. So that's why we put the note there is subsection 2, an opportunity for homeschooling, since it captures the wishes of parents. And the Act also provides for goals of education in Malawi. Basically, the purpose of education in Malawi shall be to equip students with knowledge, skills, and values to be self-reliant and to contribute to national development. So without prejudice to the generality of subsection 1, the national goals of education system in Malawi shall be to, 1, promote unity, patriotism, and the spirit of leadership and loyalty to the nation. Develop in the student respect for the Constitution of Malawi and the principles of good governance. Inculcate in the student acceptable moral and ethical behavior. And there are a lot. I think you... yes. Now, the Act also recognized the private schools, recognition of private schools. So it is provided under section 31. The minister may, for the purpose of discharging his function under this Act, establish and maintain such government schools and government colleges for the provision of education. Now it goes further under section 32. It allows any person to establish and maintain a private school or college at his own cost and expense, but with the approval of the minister. So the question is, does this include homeschooling? So this question maybe we can answer at the end as we discuss. Inspection of schools and the college. The Act also provides that the minister should be conducting the inspection. Section 54. A proprietor of every school or college shall conduct the school or college in accordance with this Act and with any subsidiary registration made under this Act, and shall obey the lawful directions and requirement of the minister given and made under the provision of this Act. So if you are operating a private school, sometimes officials from the minister, they come and they give recommendations and direction. So as a person running such institution, the law says you should obey the lawful direction and requirement that the ministry can give. So without prejudice to subsection 1, if we are running an institution, education institution, which may include as we will discuss at the end, which may include the homeschooling, 1, we are supposed to keep a record in such form as may be prescribed of teachers employed at the school or the college showing their qualifications. Ensure that the school or college is properly conducted and follows a curriculum approved by the minister. Ensure that the head teacher keeps a register of enrollment of students and of the daily attendance in such form as may be prescribed, to furnish to the minister and persons or bodies designated by him such statistical information and other returns as he or may require. So the question that we are imposing that we should think about, as we may discuss at the end, is that if homeschooling is recognized, is the homeschool also subject to following a curriculum approved by the minister? Those are the things that we should consider. And the curriculum is provided under Section 76, where it says the minister shall promote the development of national curriculum for schools and colleges that is comprehensive, balanced, flexible, integrated, diversified, and relevant to the needs of the student and society. The national curriculum shall prepare students for the world of work, social and political participation in the context of rapidly changing and dynamic global economy and society. Be student-centered and non-authoritarian, and encourage active participation of students in the learning process. Stimulate critical and effective reasoning and develop problem-solving and information processing skills. Foster self-discipline. Treat knowledge as provisional and contestable. Promote moral and ethical behavior, as Elder Chisale there is arguing that homeschool can fall under moral and ethical behavior. Develop necessary understanding, values, and skills for sustainable development. Promoting respect for human rights. Promote unity in diversity through a flexible framework which allows for the accommodation of cultural differences and needs. Take into account cross-cutting, emerging, and contemporary issues. Promote entrepreneurial and technological values and skills. Prepare students for lifelong training. So that's what a national curriculum should focus on. If the minister is coming up with a curriculum, which curriculum also applies to any institution that the minister can approve, the focus should be on those aspects. Subsection 3 is saying the national curriculum shall provide a general education based on positive values and attitude and academic and vocational skills. The area of study across different learning contexts shall be as prescribed from time to time by the minister. The Education Act also provides for advisory council. So, what a question that we should consider is that should there be no room for homeschooling in the law currently? Isn't reform possible through use of the advisory council? So, at the beginning, we are saying that in Malawi the concept is new, and our reflection there is that since there is advisory council, which their duty is outlined below, should we not use this advisory council as a way of reform so that homeschooling is included even in our education system? So their duties, one is to advise the minister on education matters upon the advisory council's own initiative or any question referred to the advisory council by the minister. Monitor and evaluate the implementation of education policies. Monitor the improvement and maintenance of quality in the education system. Initiate review of overall effectiveness of particular aspects of education system. Foster public awareness and understanding of education policies. Provide the minister with professional information and advice for the development and execution of national policies of education. Exercise and perform such other powers and function conferred or imposed upon it by under this Act. So, Advisory Council consists of 15 members who are persons with sufficient interest or experience in the education sector or in some aspect of the education sector. So if we are to advocate for homeschooling, we should do whatever it takes, maybe to find ourselves in the advisory council, because it says we can be considered as some person who have some special aspect of the education sector. So it's either you have interest or experience in education, or you have some special aspect of the education sector. Under Section 7, the minister shall, for the purpose of appointing members of the advisory council by the notice in the Gazette, invite bodies or institutions with interest in education to nominate persons for appointment. So, if we have a homeschooling institution, the notice can appear in the Gazette, then we can also be involved in appointing. We can put one person with the interest of homeschooling. The unfortunate thing is the advisory council is not yet in place. So, and that's a serious problem in Malawi. We just rush coming up with bills, and we find ourselves with a lot of laws, and we don't know how to implement the law. Yeah. It creates chaos. Like there is land development, what council, it's not there. And if you have issues, you cannot go to court. They will say, go to this council first. If you fail to resolve there, it's when you come to court. But the institution is not there. So, and we are surprised because this Education Act is something that was enacted some time back. But up to now, we have never come up with this important council to make to advise the minister on issues on education.
In that case, are the pronouncements and decisions of the minister valid without this council? Where are they based?
They are valid because the minister, without the council, is given a mandate on the education thing, everything about education. It's the minister who makes the decision.
So who appoints the council? The council is ceremonial in a sense.
Yeah, of course it's a ceremonial, but we can just advocate that the minister should come up with
the council.
It is the minister that comes up with the council.
Yes. Because the council is appointed by the minister, though there are other players. But the basic thing is he should put a notice in a Gazette inviting responsible bodies to come up with the names. The appointing is just announcing. It's more like the president announcing body members when the body members have been done by Agujibani plus the responsible principal secretaries and the ministers. The president just announced, but it is deemed that the president have. Yes. I think basically that's the law in Malawi.
We are now beginning the discussion. Let's use this.
Maybe I should just finish on the question, then the questions should come in. So, first question: how does the law in general view the right to education in the world and in Malawi in particular? I have provided a simple case authorities. Like I said, that in USA, this homeschooling is recognized. To begin with, in 1925, the Supreme Court, in the case of Pierce versus Society of Sisters, where the court overturned an an Oregon law banning private education, stating that the child is not the mere creature of the state. The case examined private education broadly and did not, of course, specifically address homeschooling, which was virtually non-existent at that time. So in 1925, even in USA, there was no issue of homeschooling. But this case, the important aspect that to capture, if we are to find ourselves in this situation, is to use the word that the court used, that the child is not the mere creature of the state. Because the law that we have discussed is more like we are giving the children to the state, yes, to manage their education. So the court is saying, no. The child cannot just be a mere creature of a state. There are more aspects about the child. So, again, in 2018, just 2018, some 4 years ago, the Georgia Court of Appeal overturned a lower court ruling against homeschooling. So the court stated that the liberty, interest of parents to direct the upbringing, education, and care of their children is the most ancient of the fundamental rights we hold as a people, and is deeply embedded in our law. This cherished right derives from the natural order, pre-exists government, and may not be interfered with it may not be interfered with by the state except in the most compelling circumstances. This was a clear case of homeschooling. The state was trying to say no to homeschooling. So the way the court put it is that the parents have the right over the government, because they are saying this, it derives from the natural order which pre-exists the government. So basically, encourages that parents can have a say on what kind of education that is to be given to their children. Now that's a right of education in the world, and in particular homeschooling. It's recognized in the United States of America, and those case authorities, they offer a very good foundation as to homeschooling in general. So, is it legal to homeschool in Malawi? The answer is yes. We may be caught maybe under private institution. If we are to homeschool using a formal institution, we can fall under private institution. And if there are any problems, we can even use the international law to say that parents are given freedom to choose the kind of education on the children. It's provided by law, and we can even support our position by the two cases that I have cited, which provide very good statements to support homeschooling. What general pitfalls are there in general and in Malawi to be avoided? The only problem in Malawi is that most of the things we are saying, they are subject to approval by a minister. You remember we have talked of the curriculum that they are supposed to be offered in a private institution, which if we are to take homeschooling as an institution and falling under private, we need to comply with the curriculum that the minister is to come up with. There are also issues of inspections. They will come and inspect, and when they come and inspect, they will give directions, and the Act says we should obey the direction of the minister. So, those are the identifiable pitfalls, the issues of curriculum, inspection, And the other question, as the world moves closer to the end, certain liberties will be restricted. Do homeschooling parents have legal recourse before they just give in to the right? I think yes, there is a legal recourse. We can, if we feel that the decision by the minister or the government violates the rights of our children, or on a ground of discrimination on religious aspect, we can always go to court and seek redress. The only worry I may have is the end times, and if these liberties are restricted and we are appearing before a judge, a government official, then maybe they may still rule not in our favor. For example, the case that I have cited, Jehovah's Witness against Argentina, in all those courts, government courts, they were saying there is no problem with the decree by the government. So it only went to the Commission on Human Rights, that's where it was declared that no, there was a violation of human rights. Unless if we appear before a judge who is also a believer of, or somebody who has knowledge on homeschooling and supports homeschooling.
Yeah, just to add on that one. I think expecting us to be covered within that setting of end times may be expecting too much, because by that time the environment would have changed. Even the legal framework would have been prepared to support such interests. So the judge would have to use those tools, and expecting him to have different tool and produce a different result would be expecting too much. So for that time, let's leave it with God. But let's manage what we have, what is still there. Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing, we cannot even go beyond Malawi, because Malawi is just implementing things that have come.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole essence of United Nations, coming up with all these rights. I think I should stop there.
Yeah.
Oh, no, there's just one. There's just one remaining, I think. Yeah. There's just one. Is it necessary to have this homeschooling children registered? According to what I have presented, I think yes. Because if we are to operate formally, it means we are to register an institution and have our children registered as required by the law when you are establishing a private institution. Yeah. Should end there.
Is it practical? Can you register as it is now? Where would you go and just register your family? I don't know how are they going to charge you? I don't know. Is it practical? Is there anywhere we can go?
Okay, I was just saying that this registration process, when is it coming in? Is it just when me and my husband and Bas we go register for our children, or it's when we have an institution that's following this homeschool thing, and then we are registering that institution?
Okay, my take is that if parents with similar interest of homeschooling come together and try to establish institutions, because my understanding is it's also one way of preaching. There are others They are not homeschooling, but they may have interest to have their children homeschooled. Yeah. Even if it's by different parents, as long as it's homeschooling. With similar agendas, and they are satisfied that if I send my kids to this institution, it's better than sending them to the formal schools. So if that is the case, then it's where we can now talk about registering. But as parents, I don't think you can register as individual parent and call it an institution. I don't think so. So that can just covered by, it's an informal and you are not supposed to register. It's more like during the COVID-19, people were homeschooling without any formalities. So, yeah.
Okay, maybe a follow-up question after that explanation. In the informal setting where you have where you're teaching your students at home, where does it stand now in the laws of the land? Where do you place that informal setting in the laws of the land? Okay, I'm saying in an informal setting, like we are teaching our children at home. Where does that now? Where do you place that in the laws of the land? Because my understanding is most of these laws that we are looking at, they are applying to a formal setting where you have an institution for homeschooling. But now my question is now on where you were just teaching our children at home. How do the laws apply now?
Maybe just to try to answer before he gets in. Knowing the setup of your country and the background of the education system, you are an independent entity. You need to decide what do you want and where do you want to fit in and why do you want to fit in. Normally, if your child reaches writing exams level 8, you can register that time for the examination board from grade 8, from 2, from 4. It is okay. But now for you to now try to say, it's like you want to fit in a system where it is not legal, or no, not legal, but where the system does not accommodate what you already do. Already having a challenge as a country. A lot of children don't go to school. Majority. Ana tumalai muno musapita ku school. Nanji mugamati mukusamukira mugakhala mamidzi mukapesa kuti ana ambiri they drop out, and with the coming of COVID, the school dropout inari higher than any other time. Chifwana jamafusa kuti ndio school ndidzikatani. What's the purpose of me learning? Now your question is, what is your purpose of your child learning? Now if you can see what the system yanu kunoku does not have a place where it accommodates you, it means you will find a syllabus or a curriculum that can sustain zomwe ukufuna out of getting zomofuna tizituke pamwanayo. That's why international curriculums come in, that you can easily write an exam, or even if you use anything. Like Tindi, this will come in the next topic tomorrow evening. Like Greeks, it's under Andrews University. It was done for homeschooling parents who travel around the world, especially missionaries. Ndio mata kumpunza mwana wako paka nafike level 7 or any other level that you want. You can easily apply for assessment. Ama ngompanga assess mwana uja ngukutu mzirashani certificate. Ndio stage mene watani wadusa. So it is now up to you, but don't force yourself to fit into a system that does not exist as yet.
How then will you go and register your child whom you have been teaching at home to sit for an examination when that child has not gone through the normal system for that examination?
Okay, maybe we are trying to address questions that have not been covered in this presentation. We were looking at the legal framework. The question from Brother Makuta and the comment from Sister Mandula, of course, it is arising from a question from the Ntondas, but it is addressing a concern that has not yet been discussed. For now, we are looking at, does our legal tools, accommodate this thought? And it was answered from the very first paragraph. If it was to be a book from council, the very first statement was, this is a new concept. All we are trying to figure out is, in the absence of the recognition of homeschooling in our legal tools, can we still operate and never protract the wrath of the available legal framework? I think that's what we are doing. So, issues to do with the registration, if it is in the context of sitting for an exam, it could be different from what was meant by registering as provided for in the tools that were being read out. Because for a child to sit for an exam, he's registering for an exam, but having been prior registered as a student in the education system of the country. So that we'll discuss maybe when we get there. For now, let us take these positions as take home, that the laws of Malawi do not know that a parent would want to get the burden that is put on government to shoulder it him or herself. The laws are surprised with your thought, because as a country we thought it would be something that every parent would be happy that burden is put on the state. That's what the picture that is coming up. It is the state that has an obligation. Parents have a duty to remind the state of their obligation. They will only be paying taxes. Now, how I've understood it is, the Right to Education Act was framed with a mindset that the government has a responsibility to provide education, because it had become party to the international treaties, as were said. At the same time, since government was failing to provide that education covering the whole country, there was interest from private players to support government. And government is trying to use this regulation to regulate the private education business. That's why there is this mentioning of inspection, registration, because government wants to see that if I want to be making money through providing education, am I not duping the citizens of that state, citizens of Malawi? So, I look at the motivation in the Right to Education Act as not being that of limiting parents, because already our state is unable to fulfill the demands from the many homes that we have. That is evidence that government is failing. If a parent would say, I would be teaching her myself, government would simply say, what a relief. Yes, as long as it's secondary. But in our state, the government can provide. Government has a moral ground to argue with the parent. In a country where government is failing miserably to provide for the basic education needs, it doesn't have the moral strength to say, why do you want to teach your children at school, at home? So, registration, my private institution, government is regulating it because they are desperate for schools. Somebody sets up a school, people send their children there, hoping that what they will be doing there is what the government is providing. That's why they said, if you want to do it as a private entity, then your standard must be equal to or above what the state is providing. Looking at that clause, you would see the motivation of the law is to make sure that people that get the education from private entities, which gives benefit to their operators, are not duped. The regulation has the spirit of protecting citizens not to be duped. In this case, because our laws are silent on homeschooling, we are very safe. Because what it means is, by the time the laws will respond to homeschooling, we will be part of the process to define what the law would say. So we have engaged the process at a very good point. The laws are silent. When the laws will say something, at that time, the laws are made by people who would have to be heard. All we have to do now is to prepare what will be our statement at the time that the state would need to be guided on what to say in its laws to do with homeschooling. We need to be preparing in that direction. That was my comment.
My comment also wants to tackle just one issue, because as you said that homeschooling is a new concept. So to me, I'm seeing it as an opportunity. And I just want to ask to say, assuming the homeschooling parents want to engage the government, not maybe waiting for an opportunity to arise, but assuming we decide to say, okay, since the law is silent, and we want to create a legal platform that accommodates homeschooling, what is the procedure for engaging the minister and all that, so that that legal framework that supports homeschooling is in place?
Okay, so to answer that, since there is no advisory council where you would have ordinarily go with those concerns and sit down with advisory council, which in turn would have advised the minister, I think direct engagement is possible, whether direct contact or you want to put it in a written concept, explaining the whole idea, the reasons behind, and the minister, if the minister is convinced, that would also inform policy direction.
All right. I'm just excited to hear what has been transpired. If we are to engage in such an act, it'll be well if we could also cite what has happened with COVID. We have seen that COVID required parents to train their children at home. So I just have this thought that the minister will be even very interested to know what comprises homeschooling, because students suffered at that time, and it is a need for people to have technical know-how in how they can handle such situations at home, like training their students at home. So if we are to engage that, I think putting that clause also in there and giving an example of COVID would also give the minister an understanding of the importance of homeschooling. That's just a comment.
And basically, it depends on how do we want it to be. If we are doing at individual level as individual families, I don't think there is that monitoring in Malawi that people can actually come to your house and say, you are homeschooling your children. Why are you not sending? Ordinarily, the state duty is to make sure that children are in schools. Yeah, that's why we are talking of compulsory, free and compulsory primary education. Yeah, so it's a Judah state maybe to go, but it's not possible for the state to come into our homes and see are these children going to school or they are being homeschooled. So for the time being, I would say there's no any problem doing that, but maybe from what we have read, if we are to be good with law, is those parents with similar interests just come together and see the way forward as to if that happens, it's when now we are talking of registering. About registering, you are homeschooling the children, then you want them to sit for examination. I'm not quite sure about how it can happen, but my understanding these days, they are even, I was surprised, my niece, the school called me and said, what is her what? She want to sit for primary school living education, standard 8 exam. So I was asking, what's her number? I'm a pastor number yanji these days. Then I had no idea. I had to ask, what number is it? Then it was given to my other relation. So she had to send.
What number? City number.
And it's not examination number.
No. You're a student.
Yeah, these days it's that formalized, and you cannot even allowed to sit for exam if you lost that number. Maybe if they check in their system, it's there, they can give you. But if you didn't register, and it seems it's done, maybe standard 1 or 2 or somewhere there, even before. Yeah.
Yeah, we are getting there as a country.
And it should have started maybe some 8 years ago.
Yeah. One of the comments I wanted to raise is okay. I'm trying to be sensible, but I've read the mind twice already. I don't want to. Okay. Because of the other comments that are protracting more thinking within me. I was listening to the debate in America that happened years back when they were trying to agitate for Christian education. The state wanted to be teaching the children. Some believers wanted to give Christian education to their children. And there was a need to define Christian education. If we look at homeschooling as just taking the children away from the public classroom and teach them at home, and when time for exams come, allow them to write exams, and then they come back and wait for another 2 years, then we need to think again if that is really what should have been our motivation. Because in the courts in America then, when they were defining Christian education, those that have sunlight material, there are audios in that material. A certain legal counsel was presenting to parents like we are his experience from the courtroom while trying to defend Christians that were pushing for government to allow them run Christian schools. So they were saying, having a school that has every teacher a devout Christian does not make that school a Christian school. The Christian school is a school that has Christianity in its philosophy. Now, what we have seen here is that the right to education talks about the content that Malawian children are to be taught. That is where the argument should begin. We need to look at it from that point and then build the whole structure to a point where we can engage the public and have good reasons that the public would appreciate that if you train somebody under an environment that is different from what the rest of them are doing, that somebody would add value to the society
other than bring trouble. Because we must give something that is better than what the public is giving. So we need to look at what is it that is scaring us away from the public system. And what is it that we can give better than what the public is doing. This discussion should not be seen that after whatever we want to do, we would like to produce the same product as the public school is producing. Then I think it is not worth going for. We must be broad enough as we look at this thing. This is just the beginning of the engagement and discussion. But as we dive deeper into it, our thinking must be broadened, because it's only at that level of engagement that we can bring up something that would really make the public within our scope appreciate that we have a point.
I was afraid you were going to finish every comment. There, I will not repeat some, because if a point is already made, there's no point of repeating it. I'm hoping I'll be the last one to comment, because we have also running out of time for the plenary comments. But I just wanted to make a few comments on what has already been said. The first one was about the definitions that you mentioned about defining a school. Is to ask ourselves the question, can the homeschool be defined as a school? I think there's something that was mentioned there which defines a school. It was not about buildings. It was not about teachers. It was about the content of what is being learned. That's what defines a school to be a school. There was a word secular, and I think I'm understanding the word secular in the context of the word religious. Because by saying this one is a school because it teaches secular, religious would mean you're going to seminary, you're just learning about how to be a better priest and blah, blah, blah. That's religious instruction. You're just being taught about praying and how to kneel and whatever. That would be deemed religious. But if you're talking about mathematics, 1 + 1 is square root of this, that cannot be defined as religious. That is being defined as secular. So in the context of the definition itself, what is a school? Then if the homeschool that one is running, you are combining your religious instruction and the secular instruction, where secular is understood that it is conventional, mathematics, biology, physiology, and all these things, then you are running a private school. It is a school that you are running, so to speak. But I think that same definition is one that can be used as a pitfall. Suppose Malawi was organized and inspectors are coming, they'll simply ask you, what are you teaching the child? Then you simply say, no, I'm only teaching them about the sanctuary and all these things and whatever. Then they'll afford you that, my friend, this is not a what? This is not a school. There's no conventional studies that you're doing. So I wanted to say, part of it has already been said, that sometimes we may find ourselves fighting a battle that doesn't exist. Because as it is now, even that framework is not even there. So you shouldn't be fighting a fight that is not even there. However, on the point of the legal recourse, I believe that the clamp is clamping slowly, even in America. Because in America you have some states, homeschooling is acceptable, blah, blah, blah. But there's an attempt to close that window down. But I am sure that even in America, that window will not just go quick and it's closed. They will be narrowing the gap by and by. So I think that element of legal recourse, I do understand you and me, or at least on the most part, many people who do homeschooling, some of them are Christians and all these things. There is a tendency for us to play the victim. This is the point I want to make. That if somebody comes and says, no, you're not doing this homeschooling right, no, this is wrong, by the laws of Malawi, this is not okay. Don't play the victim and say, you know what, these are times of trouble, I'm suffering for my whatever. Maybe check yourself, check what you're doing and how you're doing it. Are you really doing it right? Are you following the right procedures and all these things? And if you are, maybe there's a time to seek some of the clarifications we've learned here, that you know what, according to the laws of the land, according to what Malawi needs for every child, this is exactly what I'm providing. Can you please show me which article, which subsection I am going outside the box? Because our lack of education sometimes and information and knowledge is one of our biggest pitfalls. Because somebody was whispering to me, I don't know how far true this is, saying, no, the Malawi Law Society is discussing to ban homeschooling. Okay? Now, there's no board, he's just made it clear here, there's no advice at the council, there's no all these things. And there's no capacity even to make sure every child is in school. So, if you don't know some of the things we've learned here, then you simply say, I think I'm a victim, I should suffer for my faith. But it's something which you can challenge and say, no, wait. You are saying I should send my child to school. Which school? Do you have the capacity to offer this quality of education I'm giving to my child? So that knowledge will help you to seek some legal recourse, even though this window is going to be closing. There will still be room for you to pass until such a time. My point is to have this attitude where until such a time, when the door is completely shut, then indeed internationally, locally, there's nowhere else to go. But I think as we are now, the window is wide open. There is no need for you to start back, going back and say, no, you know what, I think let me just accept. I knew at some point I'm going to be prohibited. So I think the time has come. I think that's it. I guess there's still room for one to fight these battles. Otherwise, this is a fight that has not come. But I was just thinking from the comments that were made. The issue of the government not having capacity to take in every child. I was tempted to think that could it be the issue would be it's not the government's capacity, but it's your capacity to enroll a child into a decent school. So would that not be deemed, maybe it's a question to Robert here, would that not be deemed like you are inhibiting the rights of the child to say, you are Mr. Jesari, you are capable of enrolling your child in that private school. So why are you choosing to put this child in? Are you not infringing on the right of the child, so to speak? Not so much on the government's ability, but your capacity to do something like that in that way. So my question is the last one. After he answers, then we should close this session.
Okay. Actually, that's what I wanted to say at the end, to say that if you are doing homeschooling, and even if the government official comes to you, the simple way of saying it is that here is your, if you see for example, the national education policy, there are purposes for the policy. So your defense is they can only catch you if you are not in line with the national policy on education, or you are not in line with what I have presented here. If you go to the presentation, the purpose of education in Malawi, all those things, just go check. And you find all those things. We have talked of cultural and religious aspects. They are included, all those things. So what is important is just to make sure that the homeschooling we are doing, they are in line with the purpose, not the actual whatever is happening in the formal schools, but our guide is the purpose. So what's the purpose of education in Malawi? And those are the things that we have presented. And you find all those things that you are in good books with what the law provides. So, Mr. Gisari, you can learn homeschooling, and I don't think there are any problem. And actually, the way they have put it, Masamu Mwewa, they are included as a secular. So you can only be called a school if you just incorporate these subjects. Yeah. Yes. 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 There are no problem at all, because this subject it's just, even if the minister comes, it's just for him to approve. Yeah, you have included secular or what we call conventional subjects. That's all, and we are good to go. But at the end, what I was trying to say is, if we are coordinated, instead of doing it as individual, we can come up with something. If it comes to that point, that's where we talked about the registration. Otherwise, as it is, I don't think there is any necessity to register. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Robert. We need to make him rest. His legs have been standing for some time, and the questions have been bombarded. Out of interest, let me just ask a question out of interest. How many of us have ever seen the Constitution of Malawi? You've just seen it before somewhere, somehow. You've seen it. I've seen a few hands. How many of you have the Constitution of Malawi? There's only 2 people there. 3, okay. 2 people have the Constitution. And the rest of us? Yeah. So what he simply said, if you've heard him very well, this information, if you have it, it will make you wiser, because nobody can come and push you left and right. You simply go, say, in the Constitution, subsection 29, you can actually pull it out for him, whoever it is, my friend. This is the goals of Malawi on education. I'm achieving exactly that, just that. So, in that discussion, you have a fair chance. It's important to know the laws of your own land. So, let me encourage you. I, for one, I think I have the Constitution as well. You should have the Constitution. Even the hard copy book, you should have it. Sometimes go through it. What does it say? Especially on education, go through it. What does it say? And be knowledgeable. All right. No, thank you very much for the presentation. We are going to ask Nozagani to pray. After she prays, and we'll discuss some announcements and all these things for what is going to happen next. Yeah, Madam Nozagani, may you stand up and pray.
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for helping us do our presentations. And help us to learn more and more and listen to you. And help us that we should take many things that we have learned and apply them. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. And apply them. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. And apply them. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. And apply them. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.